That pencil over there is mine. Did you? Yeah. Got one over there. Okay, so we'll call it 9:35. And I'm gonna call the meeting to order. And we have David Neal. David, you're here. Are you public? Are you here semi-official? The only reason I ask is whether you get to speak out of turn or not. Okay. You'll be welcome to contribute whenever you like. Okay, so let's take a moment of focusing and reflection. Okay. So Maggie Ray, our secretary, let me know that she wasn't going to be here today. Mason, yeah, Mason, you're, as of today, you're the commissioner, the environmental commissioner, is that okay? And you'll be with us for the foreseeable future.
Whatever the mayor tells me to do, I do.
Okay. Anyway, you're welcome. So I'm for all of our benefits, I'm just trying to identify who's in the room and all. Arrington is the new chair for the Land Care Committee and is therefore a board member today. Grace is the I guess Arrington, yours is effective as of next month since we have a switch over. Gracie is the outgoing member or chair of the Land Care. And according to my thinking, you're still a member of this board until after we're done today. So. But Arrington, you're welcome to contribute whenever you like. And then that's pretty much it for who's here. And I want to just acknowledge David's presence here too. David's on Land Care Committee and has been focusing on hemlocks and other tree issues, and I think a great resource for us all. Okay. So agenda, let's look at, there's 2 pages, no, there's 1 page on this in this version of agenda. Let's take a look at that together. And what the third item on the agenda, adoption and approval of minutes. I've realized that there's some changes that need to happen in the minutes that are just a little too involved to try to do it sitting here. So I'm providing the minutes really for information only. So you can look back at what we were doing in November if you need to be refreshed on that. And I'll bring it about the corrected version back for study and approval at our next meeting. That is assuming that we adopt that as a change to these amendments. Another change that I've introduced is back on second page, item number 7, under new business. I've written in Arbor Day plan and date, and That's because we need to be thinking about Arbor Day. So I'm putting that up on there in the beginning of the new minutes. And I'm realizing I'm having a tendency to move away from the microphone a little bit. So if anybody's having trouble hearing me, raise your hand or yell at me or something.
When is Arbor Day? What's the date of Arbor Day?
That's the question.
Huh.
That's the question. No.
April 29th, I think, 8th, 29th.
Well, that's actually the question that's in the air right now is when is Arbor Day? And it's part of what we need to discuss today. Yeah. I'll explain more when we get to that. So with those changes, the status of November meetings and the Arbor Day thing item being added to the agenda. Are there any other changes that people or additions to the agenda for the day? If not, any objections to accepting it? So as changed, let's accept the agenda for today. Then moving on to minutes, I provide the minutes from November for your information. And as you look it over, if you see things that you recognize as needing changes, then send me an email. I'll make sure that gets incorporated into how we deal with things next month. Okay. Brings us to public comments. There's your chance, Dave. Okay. I'll stop bothering you. Okay. So reports, this will probably be short and sweet. I should say that Barry Kreisman stopped by a little earlier, and he and Daniel both are in a meeting at this time. He thought he might be able to join our meeting later on. So since usually Public Works has some things to say, we'll make sure we included him in an opportunity for him to talk after he arrives. Okay, so reports, chairperson. Last time we met in November, I was telling you that I had finished the application to Tree City. And I was waiting for responses. I ended up waiting a very long time, and I began to be concerned about it. And it turned out that they were sending some things to the wrong email address, and I wasn't seeing it. And so we had a glitch in communications there for a little while. And it turns out there were a couple of things that needed to be changed in the application that I had submitted. Somehow the copy of the Arbor Day proclamation from last year ended up with a wrong copy somehow, and I had to replace it with a correct signed version. And the other thing, one of the things it it says there's some language in the application that says if you're required to do a work plan, then you need to include it in the application. And I read that as a bigger if than it turns out it was. You are required to have something in the application, and I had left it blank because we didn't have one. So there's still something to be worked out in how I do that business with the forestry person, Andy Blenninger. But he was gracious enough to say he can accept our application without that this time. And I fixed the issue with the Arbor Day proclamation. So we were accepted as Andy, who's really the key person in that process, who accepted our application, passed it on to Tree City, and Tree City has not gotten back to me yet. So I'm going to call him after the meeting and see what the deal is, if he knows anything. And I'm confident that we'll all be accepted by the time of our next meeting. There's a lot of little things to learn about that process. And I keep talking about it because I want people to be at least a little bit aware of it as we go along. Okay, so I'll do a little explanation now, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes as part of new business. And that is the question about Arbor Day celebration and when it is. So the question was asked, when is it? For quite a long time, Arbor Day celebration has been done in conjunction with the native plant sale. It's called Arbor Day celebration and native plant sale. Only with all the energy that goes in the native plant sale, it ends up sounding more like native plant sale and Arbor Day celebration.
Well, I mean, Arbor Day is typically it's the last Friday in April. So it's never the native plant sale, which is on Saturday, but we celebrate Arbor Day on that Saturday. Yeah.
Selling them. But it is
Mhm.
April 28th and it's
Yeah.
150 years. Friday. Oh, Friday.
I mean, what we usually set the native plant sale is the day after Arbor Day.
In this case, it's next year. It'll be the week before. The last Friday.
So there has been question coming out about when it would be, because there's some people who are feeling like Arbor Day and native plant sales should not be done on the same day. And so we've been going back and forth a little bit on what we're actually going to do. If Arbor Day, the original Arbor Day was done to plant trees. And it was a day when the whole community got out and planted trees. And the best time to plant trees around here is in the fall. You plant them, and then they have all winter and everything to kind of get settled in their ground, and they can take off on cue in the spring. So I think we have some. We need to be thinking about that question, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes under new business. Other things that I have to report. I'm not thinking of it right now, so I'll let it go. It seems like there's one other thing, but I'm not remembering it. Town manager's not here. Public Works is not here. Do we have anything coming from the Board of Commissioners mentioned would be?
Nothing I'm aware of for this meeting, no.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so moving on, old business. I'm calling it old business because it has come up a time or two. I'm labeling it here as committee organizational. So this is the last meeting of 2022 calendar for this committee. Yes, but it's a 2022 meeting. We've always started in January. We've already always had a meeting in January, and our calendar has begun in February. Because it's new members versus old members kind of kind of thing. It's strange, but that's just the way it falls to us as being the committee that meets the latest in the month. You know, at any given time, we're always bringing up the caboose. So next month will be the time when we have new members on board, if there are new members. It'll be also the time when we think about our organizational issues, about who's going to take what role in the coming year, and questions like that. So just want to mention that'll be a significant point of the plan next month. Arrington will be here as new member. You know, the land care chair is a member of the board, and that's the way things are written. And in some years there are changes that happen elsewhere. We have three at-large members, which at the moment are myself, Phil, and Maggie. And then we have also the commissioner, Mason. So that'll be and then so next month, be thinking in terms of those kinds of transitional questions and things that'll come up. We'll have some time to talk about it in our meeting next month. Any other thoughts around organizational questions or information? Okay. So
I think it's important that we be sure. I'm turning mine over, and perhaps Maggie has her board of the tree board rules of procedure, which is adopted in 2016. And we are meeting monthly on the fourth Tuesday. Traditionally, no meeting was ever scheduled in December due to the closeness of the holidays. Land Care has no meeting close to the 4th of July, so there are only 11 meetings of the board. But it is important to note that I have a copy, and if no one else has these copies of the procedures, the rules and the bylaws, it's important that we follow those and have that in our presence. January is supposed to be the first meeting, but that's, if you want February to be, that's fine. But I do think it's important that we know what our rules and procedures are and how we relate to past and present board members. And it would be necessary, as we will in February, for the Land Care to have the swearing in of the people who are going to be the members.
Okay.
Okay. So do you have your copy?
I do,
Okay.
not with me.
I think it's very important that be part of a handbook or have that part of the educational process, because it does give us actions.
And actually, one thing I would like us to consider is finding a special meeting time where we can kind of a training event for all of us, where we can look at bylaws and other issues and make sure that we're all on the same page with how we operate and things like that. I don't have a particular date in mind, but that's part of what I would hope we would talk about at our meeting next month. And it's interesting, Grace, because you're pointing out that it says we start in January.
Mhm.
I think that's a great thing to do, but things have not always functioned that way in my experience. And if we want to make sure that we're following the bylaws, then we need to talk about how we do that. Is to have a huge gap in at that time of year because of the holidays or whatever. And then not be able to move on after that it's,
Well, as I remember, you were elected in January. Is that correct, of last year?
yeah,
And are you continuing? Because the second order of business would be to elect the chair, vice chair, and secretary at the first organizational meeting. So that needs to be done for reelection for yourself or the other three officers.
mhm,
That's in that.
Right.
particular line here.
and part of the issue that we're dealing with here is that we didn't really get started with this committee until halfway through the year. There were so many absences early in the year that where we were not able to function as a committee when half the committee wasn't here.
But
We-
there are
we
only
had- we
four
had-
members on the board. And you can have it large, but there are three officers. And then you can have, it's a small group.
It is, and that may be something we want to think about as well, is that do we need to see if we can get another person on the board. But it was really May or June last year before I was able to really have an actual functioning meeting. And it was just because of a lot of absences. So something I really feel strongly that we need to take a look at how we operate year to year. Okay. So, I have as an old business item, Tree City. I don't know, there's actually business that we have at this point. I in my report, I kind of told you what was happening with the Tree City application, and beyond that, I can just say that part of what I will hope to do during the next month is to be talking more with Andy Pleninger, and if need be with Tree City people, to make sure that we're in good shape with how we move forward with Tree City application and such as that. So I'll bring that forward till next month as well. Okay. So on the second page, well, I say second page, item number 3, under old business, plan to meet informally with representatives of other entities that share interest in trees, is the way I put it here. Remember Maggie and Grace prepared the nice. Oh,
Just
you
read
didn't?
that.
Hmm?
Just read that.
Oh, it's Rebecca.
I would.
Okay. That depicted the relationships, the different entities that have things to do with trees and the communications, and I think that's a. Do you know where that poster has gotten to?
You have that.
Okay, she may have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So, that we were realizing that the timeline that was presented there wasn't necessarily going to be entirely workable, but that it's a very good idea to be having those conversations. So I wanted to bring it back today and make sure that I'm not losing track of that. And I wanted to ask if anybody's having thoughts about how we proceed. And I was saying we'll meet informally. One thing we didn't do is say who's going to try to meet with who.
well, another
Should I
Another
just
piece
give
of
us-
paper that would be of help, which is in all of our notebooks, is the one that is presented at the Tree Board Connections. And obviously it's the Public Works because of the public lands. But the purpose also of the tree board is we don't do anything with private properties and taking care of trees, but we educate and have opportunities to work with those people. And so this would be another, along with your bylaws and procedures. These are the people in red that we were talking about at that meeting when Maggie was here. For example, we would be working within the town with the conservation and open space, which I think is Mary Nell Todd. Firewise, because of the bags and removals, invasive plant removal, native plant sale, and Arbor Day. So those are the big connections. And I think one of the older business today is decide what you are going to do with the Arbor Day. And that's the communication that we would have a representative, and I'd be happy to be the representative to the land care native plant sale.
Let me just point out in terms of communication, Brad, if I might, with other entities, one of the most effective things I think we can do is to give, to make the native plant sale as a venue available to the organizations to promote the preservation of various trees. And Chestnut Foundation is an example of that, where they traditionally put up a table, again, pre-COVID, sponsored talks. And so, I mean, I think that's one of the most important things we can do. It's something we might focus on rather than informal meetings. I'm just not sure how far that gets us, but when you've got tables, presentations that, you know, a couple hundred people can see on a bright, beautiful April morning or afternoon, you've got an impact. And I do think we have had an impact in terms of chestnut awareness, also in terms of the hemlock. We've got ash trees now we need to deal with. I don't know if there are any organizations out there, but our informal contacts, if anything, I think should be directed towards getting their involvement in our native plant sale festivities, so that we can distribute that information and make it publicly available.
I agree. Oh, good.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in following up with what Mason is saying, is that we have the opportunity as a board to recommend to whoever the vendors are, whoever the plant sale chair, which we know chair is, but we did have the chestnut people there. They failed to come, and you took over and did a beautiful job. But we also have hemlock, or they're already coming. We have other people who come and work with the invasive plant removal of trees in particular. So I do think that it can still be an Arbor Day celebration. I mean, the only thing that I think we would contribute in the past is just giving the mayor the proclamation. So I do want the education to come through the plant sale, because that's where you do reach, as Mason said, all the people.
So my understanding of the plan to meet informal with the key people in different organizations was that there's information that the public needs, and there's information and coordination that the different committees and boards need to have with each other. MRA, for example, has most of the trees in the valley, and how they're dealing with ash borer or hemlock issues. Same thing goes with college. How do we coordinate with that? I think that takes a level of conversation that goes beyond what you might get in a informational public presentation. So my understanding was that was the intent of having these informal meetings, was to do that. I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I'm trying to be faithful to what I thought I understood from what Maggie was saying. Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to exclude anybody from, conversation during the Arbor Day thing, but I think both are needed myself. Okay, so Phil, if you could put me down for, as an action item, talking more with Maggie about that, what we're gonna do with that piece of that plan. Okay.
But yeah, it seems to me, Brad, what you need to focus on with through Maggie, or you maybe even go directly yourself, is finding a point person with EMRA and the college. I mean, they own the trees here for the most part. Certainly we can educate the public at our, at our, at our, at our, through the, our activities, but if you want to put the key actors together, like you're indicated, you need to get a point person from the MRA and point person from the college, and then put together point persons from these various organizations, whether it's the Chestnut or the Hemlock or whoever might be with the ash borer, and make sure they, you create whatever level of communication you want to create between those two entities. So there's several entities.
And Mason, I do remember that Daniel and even Barry have said that they have a working relation with the grounds committees of the conference center, but the college has, what do you call it when you outsource? You have just people coming in with their trucks, and they can come in and out and do all of the grounds for the college. There's no maintenance crew for that, but I know that the relationship and the sharing of information between the conference center. In fact, they have, I think, approached David Neal and other Hemlock because they were concerned about what to do in the treatment and needed to have education because the conference center was concerned about their hemlock trees on their properties. So we were trying to get grounds committees in the land care for the invasive plants as well as the treatment of hemlocks.
No,
The point person needs to be someone that works with the trees.
Yeah. So I think the first step has been taken, that we've identified the point people, as you're saying, for each of the different organizations. The step where are right now is actually reaching out to those individuals and starting to have some conversations to find out more about what each organization is focusing on and begin talking about how we can work together on. So.
Right, I'm not sure I heard Grace correctly. Is there a point person at the college, or are you telling me there is not a person?
There's none other than that Dottie Schumann, related as did Josh, that there is no maintenance. Well, maybe there is they have their people come in, plant their flowers and then make the grounds looking nice, and then the people leave. And
maybe we need to have a conversation with the leadership at the college to see if they can develop a position or add to the job description of obviously not going to create a position, but get us a point person and add to their job description to help coordinate this type of activity.
Yes.
Okay.
Daniel, you know who the person you contact with the conference center, because they're just right there near you. Is that correct? That I think I need his input if this is the conversation we've had before, right, Daniel?
Yes, ma'am. John Quincy was our point of contact here at the MRA maintenance department. And if there's anything going on that involves the town or MRA, lines, that's who we deal with. So John Quincy's the guy that we talk to. And US Lawns is the folks that take care of.
That's right. US Lawns.
The college.
So clearly we need to do some work with the college and with MRA about making sure that we've identified the right people and really begin to have those conversations in earnest. The way I'm thinking about this is there's really several important issues. We've got ongoing hemlock thing. We've got the ash borer issues. There's several really troublesome invasive plants that are dangerous to trees and dangerous to our environment in general that we want to be focusing on. And I think that
it seems to me, Brad, if I can interrupt, that we need to have from what you're saying, we need to have you need to have contacts at the operational level, but also perhaps at a more planning level with those organizations, because all those require action, expenses, budgets. And I don't think and not the operational people. So I think we ought to look at exploring the depth of our communication with them to more than one or two people so that we get planning level people that can put money in budgets to do this kind of work. Because as you pointed out, it's private property. The town can't pay for it. So we need them to put it in their budgets and as part of their priorities.
Mhm.
And so I think we've got sort of a executive level and a functional level, and we need to be communicating with both.
You're absolutely right. And then I haven't been saying it very well, but I have in mind that there's both levels that we need to be doing that. And so it's a work in progress. I think we're in a position with the tree board where we can raise these questions with the different entities in the valley and push towards a better way of coordinating with each other on this. And I think you're correct in what you're saying. So, one of the questions in my mind is we also have the land care committee that has inherited some tree functions and so within the town, there's a little bit of lack of focus on who to go to on the issues that we also need to be paying attention to. So as I was saying to Phil a minute ago, I'm going to take the initiative to work on getting more clarity on how we move forward with these things and finding the people with the entities that we need to be in conversation about what things. So and I'm open to any input from anybody who has it. Okay. There's a thing that keeps eluding me. I hope it'll come back to me. So, anything else on that item that we need to be discussing? Okay, so let's move on then to new business. And we have amended the agenda to include the Arbor Day plans. I want to come back to that for a minute. So it has been traditional that Arbor Day and native plant sale happen at the same time. I don't know, Gracie, maybe you have a better handle on the history of that, but as we begin to do Arbor Day issues, I think it was about the same time that people, as we created a tree board, there's also happening the land Khmer, which is committed as a coordinating committee, similar to what we've been talking about, so that there are members from all the different entities on the land care committee. So that's been a thing. As things have developed, the emphasis has gone to the native plant sale, and I feel there's been a de-emphasis on Arbor Day, although there's always been things there. I don't think the public really pays much attention to the fact that it's Arbor Day.
Well, that's would be the charge of this board to do what planning you would like in the events. That's where it comes in. The native plant chairs, it's more than you're saying it should be more, but you have to do the planning at the tree board as to what you want to have a success. I'd like to insert thing that from the Tree City USA is an Arbor Day celebration success. And there's several ways that tree boards are doing it throughout the country, and that's been part of the handbook that I received as a chair from Martha Campbell. There are bulletins that are coming out that you can be celebrating, but it is not the purpose of the Land Care Committee to plan your tree board Arbor Day. If you wish to have the proclamation, that's what it's been. But the celebration of whatever festivities, whether it's Boy Scouts are here, or whether you want to have it in the fall, as an extension, it can be, Arbor Day can be any tree, I mean, any tree can be celebrated. But my point is, the Land Care Committee, the Native Plant Sale Committee will allow the tree board to do whatever they want with Arbor Day.
I'd just like to, and Brad, hey, Brad, you and Gene have been involved with the native plant sale. Amy and I have too. I realize that to some degree, as you point out, it's Arbor Day subordinated of all the activities that are going on at native plant sale. But at the same time, we get a lot of people there at the native plant sale to then celebrate Arbor Day as well. And so it may take second fiddle, but it takes second fiddle with a much larger crowd than if we declared it Arbor Day sometime in whenever, whether it be the Saturday before or in September, and you could put all the bulletins in the world. I don't think you'd have as many people out there celebrating Arbor Day as we do at the native plant sale. So I think there's some benefit to having them together at the same day. And I realize there's some negatives to it as well, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I think maybe there's some ways we can look at emphasizing further Arbor Day as part of the native plant sale without divorcing the two. Because I do think the native plant sale, just because people like to buy plants, it's a beautiful time of the year. They're out there, they're involved, it's got a history. So it draws a crowd that we can use to benefit the Arbor Day celebration. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think
you.
handout materials, educational materials, anything related, you want to get the message out. And I know that Ann and our board were trying to do one during the beginning of COVID of 2021 in September, and wanted to have the celebration here and only have it as an Arbor Day or a tree board. No land care representation, just the tree board. And she was having the Chestnut Foundation come, and we were going to have a presentation here and break for lunch or whatever. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to bring the town to here, but it was over Labor Day weekend. And I'm not sure if that crowd would have come, but we never had it because we had to cancel COVID because we didn't have the event. So separate is not always the best. I agree that the more people, the message needs to go out. That's all we like to say about native plant sale. That's where you get the best audience.
So this is the conversation that I've been feeling we need to have.
Yeah.
This board needs to, Arbor Day is our thing, and we need to take responsibility for it. And then we need to, beginning now, be working on what we're going to do about Arbor Day this year. Part of being part of Tree City involves having an Arbor Day, having a proclamation from the mayor, having some sort of Arbor Day celebration. Beyond that, what we do with it is up to us.
Right.
And you're right that we need to take that responsibility and make of it what we think it should be. So what do we think? Well, let me start with things. So of those who have spoken, I'm mostly hearing that we should not try to divorce Arbor Day from the native plant sale, but to keep it at the same time.
I agree with that.
Harrington, do you have any thoughts about that? You're welcome to speak though. Okay, so then
Can I
what
make
I,
a
what I
sug-
understand.
Could I just
wha-
make, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead. Do you mind?
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, finish.
Go ahead.
It's appropriate, I feel, that the tree board could appoint a citizen from the outside to ask if they would be, work as an Arbor Day enthusiast and read up on the materials, of course, that we have. And have an extension of more educational materials at the native plant sale. But the board needs to approve that person, and I think that's how we do it with the land care committee. We have someone that's not sitting on the board, but they do come, but they are the native plant sale co-chairs. And they get subcommittee. So I think it's very appropriate if we find an enthusiastic person that is not on, I mean, there are only 4 on this tree board. And I know that as a chair of the land care, I cannot take on another responsibility, as I don't want Arrington to say that she'd do the Arbor Day when she's already overseeing the other committees. So we can reach out to people who are wanting to be of help, and it's not us. Is that what you're looking at, Mason? Is your,
I was just leaning forward to agree with you. I think, Brad, that's an excellent idea, to get one or two non-board members to basically be in charge. What do you think, Philip, of the Arbor Day portion of the native plant sale? And to get them working on that, rather than trying to do it among this, as Grace points out, small board, bring in some volunteers. Might be a way to get some people involved in being future members of the tree board. I think it's got some possibilities. Yeah.
I like that. And a person to do just one job might be willing to say, oh, okay, I'll
yeah,
do
and no
that.
meetings, no monthly meeting to come to. And also you can get Boy Scout groups to be celebrating, and that gives young people coming to the native plant sale, and there are a lot of ways, and I'd like to pass that on, and I'd be happy to share any of this material with y'all. That we're getting these bulletins from Tree City USA every month. I don't know if you're getting them now, or if Van Vincent is, or if the town has it, but they are sending out bulletins online and by mail of activities and what has worked in other towns for Arbor Day celebration as well as activities. So I think it's educating ourselves too with what we have already in our.
What presence has this board had at the previous plant sales where they could emphasize Arbor Day? Have we had a table there?
Yes, been a table. Of course, there's the Arbor Day proclamation that the mayor does. That's part of the ceremony of it all. We've also tried to have educational things. A lot has gone on the education, like having the chestnut chat people, chestnut side. I jumped back. Lines are the Chestnut Foundation people there.
With a separate table or part of our table?
As a presentation and generally as a separate table as well.
Pre-COVID, they had a separate table.
So
College has even done activities for children of being a tree. I mean, there's been the relationships of tree appreciation. But I just would like to say as a member today, if I'm still a voting member, that I move to approve the idea of an appointee of one person to be a tree Arbor Day chair for the tree board citizen. Help me word that better. Let's see.
Or two as,
Or
would you
two.
amend that to 2 as co-chairs if that's?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 or 2 as co-chairs.
And maybe ideas could be brought I could be happy to send some names by, maybe the board should appreciate. I mean, we could take the responsibility of Arrington and Maggie and Philip and Mason to send some names so that you may appoint them and ask them to do it. So that would be your job, to ask the people. I need to restate the motion. I move that we appoint two, or that we search for two co-chairs that would represent Arbor Day celebration at the native plant sale, which is going to be held this time, Saturday, April 22nd. It would be the week before the National Arbor Day celebration, but
I'd second that.
Moved in second, any further discussion? My bit of discussion is to say that I'm fine with that idea. And I think we should move ahead with it. David.
second. Saturday,
David,
Microphone.
David, he's asking you to use the microphone. You can carry one to your chair with you if you like.
Just wanted to confirm your date, Grace.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it's the eighth, not the seventh. Seventh is Friday.
22nd.
22nd with the weekend before.
22nd, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't-
not the last weekend.
I'll clean up
Although the
my ears.
national holiday is on Friday, the 27th. Yeah, 22nd, not 20.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it's a plan. And the date is given April 22nd. So I've been hearing that in the last few days, there've been flux in the native plant sale chair. And Jean was telling me somebody who's agreed to do it. Can y'all fill us in on?
Well,
that?
I'll let the land care committee report that in February, but for sure, we do have two people that have said yes, and that is Betty Douglas with a vice chair or backup as the Penders, but they will not be in a permanent residence, but Beth Frith has been asked, but I would like that to be made official through a meeting, but
Okay, so
I don't think it matters today I don't know why
yeah, I won't,
it doesn't. We do have a chair.
and hearing from my wife, I hear that there's some shifting taking place in
I just mentioned the two people that would be overseeing it, but I wanted to be heard from
Okay.
Betty Douglas. It's premature to be discussing today until Betty is reported back to me. And I don't think it matters that you
Okay,
have to have a
well,
name.
we
There's
could-
gonna be a
we-
native plant.
okay, we don't have to get hung up on
No,
this.
don't need to have the chairs. It's just-
After the meeting, I'll tell you what I've
I
been
don't need
hearing.
to have any more discussion. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's information you need to have. I wanted to take a minute to do that after the meeting. So, and when we're talking about what are we gonna do with our Arbor Day thing, I have a bit of information that may very well contribute to our thinking. I took part in an online thing with the Chestnut Foundation just this last week. And they were very energized. Because, you know, what the situation is that they've worked on developing at a very high scientific level the development of truly resistant trees. And that involves some genetic modifications of American chestnut trees. And so they've been waiting for a few years for the go ahead on beginning to use modified trees. And they've got the word from the key organization that they're within just a few months of getting that permission to do that. There's two other organizations that need to need to buy in. There's the one organization, which is more the scientific one, is really the key one. And so they're very excited at the American Chestnut Foundation about that. Just so people will have this in mind, this modification, this genetic modification has to do with a gene that, in effect, what it does is breaks down oxalic acid. And oxalic acid is the thing that does the damage in the trees. So a tree that has this gene in it is able to break down the stuff that does the damage. It will still get the fungus, but it won't hurt the tree. So, and then the next step in the continuing development of this is once they have the trees that are functioning that kind of way, then they can use back cross techniques and eliminate the Chinese component in there. And there's another, I forget the name of it, but there's a particular strain that is, they call it the darling list, but there's another name that's used to identify this strain, and they'll be able to eliminate both of those other strains so that what they'll end up with is pure American chestnut, without external things going into. And then they'll be able to do things like offer ways of taking our local American chestnuts and crossing them with this new pure American chestnut stuff to create, so we can have Montreat American chestnuts functioning. And so they're starting in the foundation, they're starting to gear up orchards and starting to work with commercial interests to be able to really produce the thousands and millions of trees that will be needed. But this many decades long goal of bringing the American chestnut tree back, it seems to be within the grasps. So I think this might be a good time for Arbor Day to get people to come talk about what's happening there. Okay, so moving along. I had said for Arbor Day, we do a date. I put down as item number 1 under new business was the working with Land Care MRA College, RE disease trees and invasive species. Dave.
Brad, can I interrupt for a second? I'm sorry. I knew the 22nd didn't sound right for our Arbor Day, and I went back and I finally found a piece of paper that says,
This may be incorrect, that's fine.
yeah, our land care committee in December said April 15th because Tracy Bailey with MRA has already reserved that date for us and all the buildings and the meeting space. But sorry to interrupt, but I was trying to confirm with Grace what she had there. But April 15th is what Tracy Bailey and she had agreed upon. Now, there may be a second date.
There is.
22nd might be fine. I
Yeah.
don't know.
They gave us about 8 choices. Somehow that typed in as the,
That's, yeah, and for some reason, I'm thinking the same thing. It's always been the 3rd Saturday, not 4th, but just just wanted to bring that before y'all, so that you know.
Yeah, I was just saying Arbor Day is the fourth, is the last
The
last
last Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
It's the last Friday. It nationally
Yeah, well, this is.
in
for the-
April.
And again, native plant sale and Earth Day celebration. So. Just, just so that. you-
No, hey, but, you know. Doesn't matter.
I don't mean to make it like spread.
We just want to.
Well, but some people, we are gonna need to have be settled on the date, because I mean, I don't recall. We got to talking about the date for that in the my church's Christian Education Committee for one reason or the other. So people are starting to look for that date and get it on their calendars. So it needs to get nailed down.
I think Jean's got a pretty good handle on the dates, and I've just sent her a text asking her to. The one issue has been, the little bit that I do know about it is that it's always been in conflict with this big plant sale that takes place in Asheville or whatever, and there's been a problem here. And she was saying just a couple of days ago that this year they're going to be a day later than a week later than the plan. It could be that David's dates are correct. I don't know.
But there's stuff going every weekend in April. So there's going to be some conflicts, but I understand what you're saying, Brad, about the big one in Asheville.
In my response to when Tracy gave dates, the 15th was never on the calendar for availability for us to use. It was only the 7th and then the 22nd or the 8th. She's given Friday, Sunday reservations because they set up on Friday. So it is April 22nd. It was never a 15th even offered.
Sounds.
So that's
Sure,
definite, it's the 22nd of April now for the plant sale.
And it has been, and that was a correction that needed to be, 27. And they were corrected, but they weren't printed. It was already printed out when it was
Okay.
corrected. Yeah, I think there's wrong on the minutes. Right.
So, it sounds right to me. Okay, anything else on, well, the agenda item was working with land care, et cetera, about invasive trees, invasive and diseased trees and such. I still think we need to have a clearer plan on how to coordinate all these interests and efforts. And I don't think we're there yet, but I wanted to make a little time for the pre-board to think a little bit about how we think things should function ideally. We have emerald ash borer, we have hemlock woolly adelgid, we have knotweed, we have ivy, we have all of these different things, and Daniel's got too much time on his hands. Make sure that they can stay busy. That's a left-handed invitation, Daniel, to participate in the conversation. We did some Ivy League stuff this last year. I'm thinking that with all these things, there may be other sort of similar activities that we may want to identify. But what can our plan be going forward? When should we think about starting having the Ivy League activities, and just how do we think we want to move this ahead this year? Personally, I think it's a good thing to do. Daniel.
I think Ivy League is a good idea as well. I mean, it gets the community involved in at least one of the invasive species that we have here in town. As far as some of the other stuff goes, I am on the list to get a pesticide license so we can start treating that stuff as like a cut and treat for some of these. The kudzu is a tough one, and the wisteria that we have here is a tough one. A lot of times the foliar spray doesn't seem to work, and you've got kudzu that's growing in the rhododendrons. But Ivy League, I think we could continue with that, especially once spring kind of turns the corner here. Or if we get I don't know how exactly you plan that in the near future, but on these warmer winter days that we're having, sometimes we could plan to do that. But again, Barry and I have provided a list to the board of some of the main areas where the ivy could be reached by the community members. Unfortunately, a lot of the places that we deal with are on the hillsides and kind of dangerous if you're not sure-footed enough, which even myself, I'm not always sure-footed enough to stand on some of these hills. So again, I think the Ivy League is a good plan. Unfortunately, sometimes Barry and I are busy, and I don't get a chance to get to the league, but I just think warmer, better days. And hopefully we had the cold snap. I don't know if anybody's seen all the ivy leaves laying on the ground in the last couple of weeks. The ivy has gotten zapped. So we're kind of hoping that maybe it froze some of those roots that are hanging onto the trees. But anyway, as far as some of the other species goes, hopefully I'll have the ability to treat that professionally for the town. Because legally, I don't think we can do that right now without license.
Daniel, I have a question. Can you go on private property with their permission and take care of this ivy out of trees? Stone walls, or wherever it's not supposed to be?
Yes, ma'am. I do believe with permission from the homeowner, if we can go onto private property and treat, but I'm not quite sure how often we do that. I know that we've had a couple of instances last year where people called about kudzu, and we came and treated the kudzu. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I do think that is a service that the town will offer, but please don't hold me to that officially, because I think Barry would know the true correct answer to that. But I think we have done private.
Can the Ivy League do that with permission of ownership?
I would assume, I don't see why. Again, I'm not 100% on this, because it is a town, it is a town entity. So as long as you have like permission, or if you were to say even to cover the town's bases, if you had a written piece of paper that says I'm giving the tree board and the Ivy League permission to come onto my property and cut around my trees. That way, if a tree were to all of a sudden take a turn for the worst after we came and did some work, you wouldn't say that town is now liable for that.
Yeah,
Sure.
you'd want a written, express written consent. You'd also want a release. You'd also want some indemnification.
For liability.
And
injury.
yeah, for liability purposes, but it's doable.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure we do it right. And obviously, if it's a licensed activity, only a licensed person can perform a licensed activity.
But could the Ivy League go and do like cut ivy off of stone walls with the owner's permission?
I would assume so. I would think that's a volunteer service, and as long as the homeowner, again, as far as a legal standpoint, you may just want to cover your
Yeah,
bases.
the Ivy League would still want that written agreement. The individuals would still want that. And
From
frankly,
the
the
property
homeowner
owner.
would probably
Yes.
want some sort of an agreement as well before he lets somebody come on their, he or she let them come on their property, because what if they got injured while they were on their property or stabbed themselves with their pruning shears or whatever? In other words, a document that makes sure everybody's expectations are that nobody's going to incur any liability as a result of the activity.
So if we wanted to kick it up a notch and start involving things that are on private property, we would need to develop such an instrument,
Yeah,
a form
but it'd
to-
be a
form to-
fairly simple 2-page. You're not
Okay.
talking about,
And we'd need to figure a way of announcing this to the community so people that would know about it and could ask for it.
and there's also no reason that that people who have a lot of work that needs to be done on their property that frankly, the town staff couldn't do that work for a fee. Rather than doing it as a service to one particular town owner, if it's private property that they receive some sort of fee for it. So,
And just a reminder that, you know, obviously, and everybody in this room knows this, but we are liable for the town right away. And we have a ton of work
yeah,
that has to be caught up on before we can even do the other tree inventories. And I know Barry has mentioned several times that we are trying to get onto that. So just keep that as a constant reminder for the town's employee standpoint that, you know, we may not be able to get to do.
the town
all the-
staff has all they can do.
Yes,
And
sir.
They've got some free moments,
Yeah.
but you know,
Yeah.
don't expect them to, they don't have any unassigned activity. They have free moments from time to time,
That's
but
right.
and they work really, really hard. I can tell you that we have a town staff that is extremely hardworking, extremely diligent, and we're grateful for each and every one of you.
Thank you very much. We're grateful for you folks too. Thank you.
And so until we find a way of doing it, Ivy League activities will be limited to town right of way. And so I'm thinking it's reasonable starting in the spring, April, if not March, to be doing a monthly Ivy League event. So just keep that in mind. Daniel, a couple of questions. To what extent does the town already coordinate with college or NRA on the hemlock woolly adelgid issues?
I don't know that I have an answer to that question. We have not coordinated, you know, much at all as far as I know. I know that we had some stuff, that the MRA had done. There's some, little sample, I'm not exactly sure what you call them either, but you can ride around and see where somebody's done some sampling on the hemlocks to see, you know, if there's any adelgids hanging out, which it's very obvious that in parts of the town, we do have a lot of woolly adelgid hanging out. But I'm not sure how often Barry's been in
Okay.
contact with John.
Okay. And same kind of question about emerald ash borer. It's more treatable in one sense than some of the others.
Well,
If
it
you
is
get it
in a,
first, if you
as
get it-
far as I know, it's a preemptive treat. So truthfully, there's no way for us to really go around and take an inventory of what's been, you know, not, been taken over by the boar already. And there's really no way for us to know if a healthy tree has the boar in it already either, because once it gets the boar, it is a matter of weeks before that tree is completely dead. And we just don't, you know, as far as we're concerned, you know, it's kind of like the chestnut blight. You're just sitting back and waiting to see what survives. Unfortunately, you know, especially from our perspective at this point, you know, you'd almost need an entire crew of people to go around and inventory what's been damaged, what's dead, and what's not been damaged at all to pre-treat. So we don't, you know, we're kind of it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. It's like the pine beetle out west. You know, it just took out complete stands of pine.
So on both of those issues, then sounds like there really isn't much happening between the town and the other
No,
entities.
I don't think so.
Out of it, which means it's probably just gonna be running wild. I kind of misspoke a minute ago because ash borer is treatable, but only if you get it before it's there.
Correct, yes.
Prophylactically, you
Yep.
can do something, but otherwise.
I
kinda
knew,
have
I
to
knew
get
you
it.
knew that. And as far as the hemlocks go, you may want, I know Barry's busy right now, but you may want to reach out to him and just see what kind of contact he's had. I know there's in the last few weeks, there's been some things going on, that he had mentioned. But I don't know about, specific conversations toward the woolly adelgid that we have going on in town. So.
All right. So. Yeah, it's time. We should be wrapping up here, so. I'm not gonna bring anything more in myself or, so. Look at the action items. We will include when you get your minutes. The minutes will reflect things that people said that they would do. So my goal here is to be having minutes coming out within a week or so of a meeting so that we all can have the same document to work from. And know what our marching orders are that we've given ourselves. And then next meeting, February 28th, the last day of February. Okay, anything else that I'm forgetting?
Just as a point of reference, I'm handing this over to, Arrington as a Montreat Journal Ordinance Chapter K through Environmental Article of Activities, and it was revised in December in 2015. This is an Appendix F. These pages give us the whole nut of what the tree board is and what it's composed of, its composition, and also the duties and responsibilities of this tree board. And this along with that other connections that Maggie has would be I think is needed for all 3 or 4 members of the board to reread and
That's
look
the
at.
tree ordinance.
Well, it has everything about what the tree board does. It's designed it explains what we do, the responsibilities, the limitations as imposed by laws of the tree board. You had to have a Tree City USA designation. In other words, you had to have a tree board if you wanted to be Tree City USA. So these come from part of that appendix. And if you don't have this, Philip and Maggie doesn't, this is in a nutshell what Ann Vincent says is the perfect thing to read if you are wanting to even show the public what we do and how we perform.
Can you give me a copy
Yeah,
or is it?
and I can have it attached. to
So,
that.
last month, we had this conversation last month, and I was suggesting that everybody find that and read it. And then I had trouble finding it myself.
Well, here it is.
And yeah, so,
Okay.
and I have copies of it as well, but I'll make sure that we all
Yeah,
get a copy of that so that we can be on the same page. Okay, thank you, everybody.
why don't I give this to, right now we can make copies right there and you can have a copy and I'll give Arrington this one. And then you can give it to Mag.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.